Welcome to Finance Deep Dive. Today, we're talking about something that's jumping from the Weather Channel right into our financial news feeds, the real, hard dollar cost of climate disasters. We're going to break down what this actually means for the U.S. economy. Right. We all see those storm warnings, the news reports on wildfires, hurricanes, floods. But once the cameras leave, a huge economic story is just beginning to unfold. So how do these disasters really, truly affect our wallets, our jobs, and the stability of the entire financial system? So let's start at the beginning, with the initial economic shock. You can think of this as the first domino to fall. It's the immediate physical damage you see right after a disaster hits. It's the ground zero of the financial fallout. And the most obvious cost, of course, is just pure property destruction. We're talking about homes, businesses, roads, power lines, you name it. They get damaged or completely wiped off the map, and the cost to rebuild is just staggering. Now, economists have a term for this, loss of capital stock. It sounds a little technical, but all it really means is that we've lost the physical stuff, the factories, the machinery, the infrastructure that we need to produce goods and services. Without that stock, an economy just can't run. And naturally, when a disaster hits, business just stops. Everything grinds to a halt. For any company in that affected area, revenue goes to zero, sometimes overnight. That immediate shutdown is a massive blow to the local economy. But here's the thing, the damage never stays local. That initial shock sends out these huge ripples that spread through the entire national economy. So let's trace how that shock actually spreads out and ends up affecting pretty much everyone. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, because this is the path that leads directly to your wallet. You see, a disaster can disrupt farming or damage an oil refinery. Suddenly, food and fuel supplies shrink. Transportation gets messed up. And what happens next? The cost of essential goods goes up for everybody, no matter where you live. These local disasters create national inflation. It also hits the job market, big time. People get displaced by evacuations and can't work. And it's not always that dramatic either. Just think about prolonged heat waves. They literally slow down how productive people can be, especially in jobs like construction or agriculture. All of this just puts the brakes on the whole engine of regional economic growth. Now, when these shocks keep happening over and over again, they stop being temporary problems. They start putting some serious, long-term strain on the actual foundations of our financial systems. I mean, just look at the housing market. In areas that get hit a lot, property values start to drop. At the exact same time, construction costs go up everywhere because rebuilding creates huge demand for materials and labor. For banks, this means mortgages get riskier, and you even start to see people migrating away from these vulnerable areas. And then you've got the insurance market. This is a huge one. As claims keep piling up, premiums have to go way up. Eventually, it gets so expensive and risky that insurance companies just leave. They pull out of entire regions. And that is a massive shift because now all that financial risk moves away from the private companies and falls right onto the shoulders of individual families and the government. Which brings us to a really tough choice for the government. When more and more of the budget has to go to disaster relief, that money has to be pulled from somewhere else. It ends up crowding out critical investments in other things we all need, like education, healthcare, or upgrading our infrastructure. But here is something that is absolutely crucial to understand. The economic pain from these disasters is not shared equally, not at all. In fact, these events almost always make existing inequalities a whole lot worse. I mean, this slide really says it all. If you're a family with fewer resources, you're just so much more vulnerable. You can't absorb a sudden loss of income, you can't afford to just pick up and move, and you're far less likely to have enough insurance to rebuild. So with every disaster, the wealth gap gets wider. So when you put all these pieces together, what do you get? Well, the biggest takeaway here is that these disasters are not just isolated one-off events anymore. They really represent a permanent, long-term shift in our economic reality. You know, this quote from our source material just hits the nail on the head. We've moved past thinking of these as random shocks. They are now a persistent, structural, and growing part of the U.S. economy. This is the new normal. And because this is the new normal, businesses and banks are totally changing how they think. They are now actively pricing in climate risk to every major decision they make, from where to build a new supply chain to which loans they're willing to approve. It's fundamentally reshaping our entire economy. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about.
This isn't just about cleaning up after the next storm. It's about the future. With all these persistent strains on our financial system, our housing market, our public budgets, is our economy actually built to handle this new reality?
If you like the content, don't forget to subscribe to Finance Deep Dive. It really motivates us to keep posting.